Stanzi and I did a puzzle over the holidays. We were out walking around one day. I think we were here Christmas Day, right? And we were walking through the Rockefeller Center area, and we were like, we haven't done a puzzle in a while. We're going to get a puzzle. We walked into a store, found a beautiful puzzle, just gorgeous picture design. It's this sort of cartoon portrayal, very artistically done, of a Frank Lloyd Wright house that is in the Detroit area in Michigan, in like a stark winter scene, 1,000-piece puzzle. And we were like, wonderful, we'll get that. We'll do the puzzle. And we are just thinking about how beautiful the picture is and how wonderful it's going to be. But like I said, it's sort of this stark winter scene. And so we get there and we start doing the puzzle and we go, oh God, what have we done? Because like the whole bottom third of the puzzle's snow. And so it's like 350 just white pieces with like almost no differentiation in them. And so we're looking at this and thinking, how are we going to get this done? We sort of start in the middle because it's like the house is in the middle. And we're looking at the box and the picture and seeing some ways in which you can pull out some of the pieces. And, oh, right, this goes here, this goes there. And then from there, and by the way, when I say from there, I mean like 3 weeks later, because this is now taking a long time. We move on to the bottom third, which is all the snow pieces. And at first it was sort of like, oh, this is going to be challenging. But actually the fact that they were all one color made it very helpful to look at the 700 pieces we had left. And we went, oh, all the white pieces obviously go down here. And so it actually narrowed by about half, right, the remaining pieces that we had. And it took some time to figure out where everything went. But it was when we got to the top third of the puzzle that things were actually really difficult, because it was this sort of dark, snowy, misty sky tree scene. And it actually became very difficult when you looked at the piece, when you looked at the picture of the puzzle in terms of how it was working out on each individual piece in that top third, to know where in that top third any individual piece went. It became very difficult because it was all gradations of gray and a little black here and a little bit of snow here. And well, is that kind of snow the same as this kind of snow? And it was the last third of the puzzle that actually gave us the most trouble, because we were looking at it and the method through which we were getting through the first third and the second third of the puzzle, we were not able to do it on the final third because of just how nuanced the picture was in the top third of the picture. And when you have that, right, when you're in that place, you basically have 300 to 350 puzzle pieces just sitting in a pile in front of you on your table, and they mean nothing. Because apart from some sort of framework that gives them some sort of fit or some sort of meaning or some sort of coherence in a bigger whole out of which you can make out where each individual puzzle piece goes, you just have a bunch of meaningless cardboard cut into these random shapes just taking up your kitchen table. And we live like that for a long time. But sometimes our life can feel like that. Because when we feel like life is some sort of meaningless gradation of things that we can't totally understand, such that whatever puzzle piece I am or whatever puzzle piece my life is in this moment doesn't have an obvious fit, doesn't have an obvious set of, I'm locked in here in this place, and you put that piece in and it just snaps in and you go, when we don't have that in our lives, there's something serious and significant that we're missing. And the life of faith can be particularly difficult when we feel like we don't have that sense of fit in our lives. Because if we don't fit in the context of our life, what sense is God making in our lives? Isn't God supposed to like help us feel like we fit? Isn't the God question supposed to sort of give us a sense of meaning and purpose and identity? But when our lived experience of our life is, I feel like I'm kind of meaningless or just floating along, I thought this God thing was supposed to be an anchor for me. And all of a sudden, I just feel totally out to sea. The question of meaning in our lives poses significant challenges for the life of faith. Our society has some answers to those that we're going to look at today. And I think the Bible has some thoughts for that we're going to look at today. These are some of the things we're going to be thinking about. We're in the middle of a sermon series titled, Why Does It Feel Like God Isn't Real? And in this sermon series, we're trying to look at the conditions of belief that shape the societal time and moment and age that we live in now, and how those conditions of belief can either lean towards faith or lean away from faith, and at times make faith more challenging and more difficult. And particularly we're looking at the things that make faith more challenging and more difficult in this time and this place. The first sermon we looked at Isaiah chapter 37, and it looked at this ancient Israelite Judahite king, Hezekiah, who went through a certain challenge of belief in his own life because the conditions of his world all of a sudden made faith difficult. Namely, there was a huge ancient Assyrian army, which was the empire of the day, that was on his doorstep. It was at the gates of Jerusalem. It was trying to knock down the door. And the fact that there was an enemy there at the gates made faith very hard for Hezekiah and the Judahites of his time. And what I've been arguing over the course of this sermon series is that while we don't have a physical army at the gates, certain ideas have marched through time that have created the conditions of the society that we live in. And those ideas, generally, they do provide some opportunities for faith, but generally, they provide unique challenges in the life of faith. And if we don't understand them, we do not understand the time and place that we're living in, and we don't understand our faith lives. God, help us. Do you see why that's so important? If you go through a challenge of faith and you don't understand the time and the place that you're living in, you might miss the fact that the hard thing that you're going through is actually about the time and place that you live in, and you might misattribute the faith challenge you're experiencing. You might say, I'm losing my faith, when in fact we should be saying, faith is hard in this time. Do you see how costly that would be to misattribute that? That is what I'm trying to address in this sermon series, to provide a ministry of understanding so that we understand the time and place that we're in, and so we understand the faith that we have. We are going to look at not two ideas. We've looked at the idea of disenchantment of the world. That's 2 weeks ago. You can listen to that. It's on the podcast. Last week, we opened up the idea of a crisis of meaning that we have in the world today. Last week, we looked at the first part of that, and today we're looking at the second part. I'm going to talk about the idea of exclusive secular humanism and also expressive individualism. Don't be freaked out by those. I'll get to them later, and I'll move on quickly. It's not going to be a big deal. Today we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. I encourage you to open up a Bible or some sort of device or something that just, God helps us to give us facility with the Word of God in a place where there's a famine of the Word of God. If you don't have facility with God's Word in your own life, your faith is in decay. That is true. Open up a Bible. Pull out a device. God bless you. We have Bibles back there. If you need a Bible, you can even raise your hand right now. It's totally up to you. I saw you, George. I saw you. You went like this. Can't really give George a Bible. He needs one. And George, if you don't have a Bible, you can keep that. It's yours. It's yours. And God bless you, George. God bless you. I don't know what page in that Bible we're on, but again, it's Ecclesiastes. It is after the book of Proverbs, chapter 2. Verses 1 to 11, I'll read the text out loud. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the children of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, for this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity, and a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. The back of our society is breaking under a crisis of meaning. Meaninglessness and the experience of meaninglessness is rampant in our times, and it is a sign of a vacuousness, a spiritual, soul-level vacuousness in our society that is oppressive to people as they live in it. And when I talk about meaning and a crisis of meaning, I'm talking about the idea of having a fit, like I said with the puzzle piece, a fit, a place, a sense in which I'm attached to something that in a web of relationships, in a web of mutual interdependence that gives me a greater significance than I otherwise would have had. Right? Like fingers on a hand. A finger is a very small thing, but a finger on a hand exists in an attached way to a larger body part that all of a sudden brings it a meaning that we look at. And it's actually so obvious, the meanings that fingers have on a hand, that even as I'm talking to you about it right now, you're like, Adam, this is so obvious. You're just blank stares. I know, fingers on a hand. But there's meaning here. We're just so used to it that we don't look at it and go, oh my gosh, it's incredible. There's meaning there attached. It's just what it is. If we were to see just a rogue finger, exactly, just a rogue finger out in the town, having a day, all on its own, we would look at that and it would stick out immediately, right? We wouldn't just look at it through the material dimension of, oh, that's a finger. We would go, what on earth is happening? Because it's being divorced from the context of its meaning would immediately trigger something from us, right? There's this kind of bad, but sort of okay 1999 movie called The Bone Collector. Has anyone seen The Bone Collector? Yeah, it's a super melodramatic, kind of weird film noir sort of mystery movie, but it's got Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie in it, and they do really quite a good job with the material, and they raise it beyond what it should be. But it's about this, like, mass murderer in the mid-'90s New York. It's like every 90s tourist to New York's worst nightmare. He's a cabbie, and he locks people in the cab and drives them off somewhere, right? And then he kills them. I know, it's terrible. Bone Collector, 1999. Well, like, the opening scene is the detective stumbles across this hand that's missing a finger, and I mean, it clicks everything, right? And later on, they find the finger, and the whole thing, the whole following the clues is set around the idea that the finger has a web of meaning that it belongs to, and it belongs on a hand, and you find a hand without a finger, and now you're following the clues that the mass murder is leading to find the finger. Like, this whole thing, all around, is the hand's missing a finger. This isn't just the case if a hand is missing a finger, it's the case if a hand has an added finger, like is the case in the wonderful 1987 movie, The Princess Bride, with that national treasure Mandy Patinkin running around looking for the six-fingered man, right? It's just a finger. But once there's six fingers on a hand, the web of meaning increases. Does anyone want to say it? My name, you killed my father. Prepare to die. Looking for the six-fingered man. Our lives are like this. Fingers on a hand. We're looking for attachment, for fit, for meaning in all these areas of our life, in relationships, in the work that we do, in the story of our life, in the narrative that we're on, the ways that we're working ourselves out in the world. And when we're not attached, when we have too little fit and attachment, we feel a crisis of meaning. We also can experience some weird meaning when we have too many fingers attached, when we are over-attached. There's like some sort of a right fit in our life that leads to the idea of I am living some sort of meaningful life. And as we do this, as we're searching for this right attachment in our lives, this idea of fit and meaningfulness, we're fighting all the time this disintegration. We're fighting over and over again against the entropy of the world that moves those attachments apart from one another, from relationships that break down, from jobs that end and fail, from a career arc that was going one way and then there's a turn, now it's going another way. And we're fighting all those things because the world is full of forces that are disintegrating the meaningful attachments and fit that we have in our life. And the ultimate sign and symbol and reality of this disintegration is death. Death is the physical sign of ultimate meaninglessness. Not only is it just a physical reality, right? At some point, just in terms of the physical narrative of the world, right? Everything's going to burn up and blow up in a giant heat death, and then it's become a big frozen ice ball. But even then, after this rock is a big frozen ice ball after the sun burns out, there's still just going to be a billions and billions and billions of years process of death just disintegrating everything. The end of death is utter physical disintegration and the utter breakdown of any meaningful physical fit and attachment in the physical world. It's not just the physical reality of this that burdens us, though. In the face of this ultimate physical meaninglessness, we can feel a deep despair. When we look at that and say, everything at the end of the day is on a path to utter disintegration, that can be very, very despairing. And when that despair works its way into our present, then our present becomes a living out and a running away from the reality of death and the meaninglessness that death is going to bring ultimately in our lives. And we are fighting against this disintegration of death all the time. We're fighting against it all the time. We're trying to make new attachments, build new relationships, find a new place where I feel at home, make a career change. We're trying to do things all the time that fight against this deep, churning, soul-level anxiety that death brings in and then works in to our experience of the present of utter meaninglessness. Historically, these things that we have had, meaningful work, meaningful relationships, meaningful place, have been undergirded by the existence of God and the idea of the existence of God. That somehow these things are meaningful bulwarks against meaninglessness and despair because God exists to give them some sort of meaning. But in a secular age, in a secular time, and we've talked about this a little bit, the question of God is at least eclipsed. In a secular age, people don't necessarily say God isn't real or God is real, but maybe that God just sort of doesn't matter, and we can give an account of the world without God. And as that has happened, the way that God has served to undergird these meaningful physical things and give them a sort of longevity, that's been removed. The rug has been pulled out from under that. And we have needed now to provide new things that undergird our experience of meaning in our lives. And our society has two major things in this time that it has offered people to attach to give them a sense of meaning and meaningfulness in their lives. The first answer that society gives is that you can attach not to God, but to the good. You can attach to a moral ideal. You can attach to an ethical ideal. And the idea of being good and participating in something good is a source of meaning for us and rootedness in our lives. This shows up in our text today. The guy here, right at the beginning, right? This is why I chose this text today. It's a wonderful example of someone who's working out in the biblical text the attempts to find a meaningful life apart from God, right? So right away at the beginning in chapter 2, verse 1, he says, I said in my heart, right? Not, God said to me, not this, that, or, I said to my heart, right away in verse 1. And then when we get to verse 4, one of the major things that he's doing is he's trying to see what is good on earth, what is good in the physical realm, and then to get busy doing good things and to derive meaning from doing what is good. So at the end of verse 3, he says, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven. And then he lists a bunch of good stuff that he went out doing. He says, I made great works. I built houses. I planted vineyards. I made myself gardens and parks. We love parks here. This guy made parks, gardens and parks, and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. He made pools, which pools are not just a good thing for him. That's a public good. In the ancient Near East, the weather is dry and arid and not at all cold like it has been over here in the last 2 days. And so when the rain falls, you've got to catch it. And cities would have pools that would catch the rain. It's a public service to people to give them access to water. He's doing all of this good stuff. And we have a very similar way of understanding our lives as meaningful in the world today by pursuing what is good. The Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor, who I've mentioned in this sermon series before, identifies one characteristic of a secular age as an age that has made the pursuit of what he calls exclusive secular humanism a final good for understanding what is meaningful in life. That word exclusive secular humanism is essentially saying that without any reference to God or some sort of transcendent higher power, we can love and be good in relationship to other humans And that is so good. Doing that is so meaningful in our lives that it excludes the need to refer to any other source of meaning. Did I elucidate that term clearly enough? Exclusive, we don't need to refer to anything else. Secular, we don't need to refer to anything explicitly. Transcendent, humanism, the desire to love and be good in relationship to other people. Taylor says that one of the major meaning-making maps that our age has given us is the idea that without any reference to God, if you're just good in relationship to other people, that is a strong enough moral source that you feel like the question of meaning is answered in your life. And this actually is really compelling because we see it played out in the world all the time. We have people in this society, they love the good, and it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it's actually a very Christian thing, right? It's like taken Jesus' ethic of neighbor love and has brought it into the present and made it a sort of societal feeling about just loving other people and being good in relationship to them, and even expressing that in like real political fervor in pursuing moral just causes. And we see people, we know people, we maybe experience this even ourselves, for whom that is obviously a very meaningful way to be living their lives. This is the first option, that we can pursue the good apart from anything else, and it'll provide meaning to life. The second option is that we can pursue the self, and in particular, a sort of sacred sense of myself, apart from anything else. This is what has been called expressive individualism. The idea that my life is meaningful if I just express the things that are going on in me as an individual. And that as I do that, I become more myself. And this also is an exceedingly powerful story and moral source in our society. We see all sorts of people who are in all sorts of different contexts saying, how can I become more me by expressing what's true about myself? And of course, this is a wonderful thing. There are all sorts of contexts where people are not able to express who they are, or they're born into rigid social structures or rigid moral structures, and people feel stifled and hemmed in. And so in one sense, depending on where you're coming from, this is a good, wonderful thing. And at the same time, this can become something that almost takes on a religious dimension, something that is so valued that it actually takes the place of God and the religious impulse in a society in the first place. And this is why, for example, something like art has such almost a sacred space in our society today. Because if my life is only meaningful, if I express my true self, the medium through which I express that is exceedingly important. And so art has actually come into our society and almost taken the place of religion for a broadly secular age. You hear people say sometimes like, theater is my church. That's not just a statement of like individual preference. That's something that's happening societally. That's like our society's built for that to be a particular experience. Because I need to express myself in order to live a meaningful life. And how do I express myself? Through art. And so art has this huge, almost religious weight in our society today. There are obvious power to these narratives and these forces in our world today. And for people of faith, when we encounter their power or watch other people encounter their power, it can erode our sense of the necessity of faith in the first place. Because we might look at those things and go, I feel great about being good. And actually, if I really dig down underneath that, I was believing God and doing the whole God thing to be good. And now I'm realizing I can be good and do good stuff without God. And so maybe I don't need this God thing. Certainly none of my peers feel like they need the God thing in order to be good. That is a really powerful, forceful experience to have. The same thing can happen when we watch self-expression happen, or desire for ourselves, just uninhibited self-expression. And we look at that and watch that feel and look like it's such a satisfying thing that we look at that in the world and go, maybe the God thing isn't really necessary. Maybe my faith was a means to these other things, and now I have these other things, and I don't need faith anymore. There are, however, a couple of problems with these solutions societally. And of course, before I say what the problems are, I'm not trying to be overly critical. And I'm going to say something at the end, actually, that hopefully pushes us very far away from being critical towards either of these options. But I'm just going to criticize them here for this moment because they obviously aren't solving the question of meaninglessness. It's like it obviously still exists, right? So I'm just like looking at reality and I'm saying our society has these two major things on offer, and they obviously are powerful. They obviously are helpful in some cases, but my reading of the situation is that the crisis of meaninglessness is on the rise. It's not declining. So I'm just looking at that and saying there must be something that's not going right in these two options. There must be something that's worth looking at and digging deeper into them. One of the problems with making the good a source for my meaning is that it instrumentalizes morality. It instrumentalizes the good. You see what I'm saying here? If in order for me to feel meaningful, if I'm not getting a sense that I'm meaningful, that I'm worth something, that I'm valuable, that I fit in the world, unless I feel like I'm doing something good, now I'm not doing what's good just to do it. I'm doing it for me. You see the problem with that? All of a sudden, pursuing good things becomes about filling me up. And so all the good stuff that I'm doing out in the world, and all the people who I think I'm helping, and all the ways that I show other people how good I am, I'm doing all of that to fill something up in me. We need people in the world who are doing good. We need people in the world who are exercising neighbor love. We just need them to be filled up by another source first. We need them to be filled up by something else so that they can do it for other people. This experience also erodes our ability to understand what is good at all in the first place, because what our society is really offering people is not the idea that you're good, it's the idea that you can feel like you're good. So it's really not morality at all that's on offer, it's the feeling that I'm moral. And that's just all about me. And at the end of the day, at some point, when morality is all about me, that is going to end in some way, in some form, on needing to express power over somebody else. Because I need to sustain the idea that I'm better or I'm more good. And it's going to break our ability in a way that is detached from my own needs to serve and love somebody else in a costly way. There's also an issue with the idea of needing to find all of my meaning in myself, in the idea that I need to express myself. This becomes a huge burden. It becomes a huge burden that is laid on people to say, you don't mean anything. You don't have value. You don't fit anywhere unless you have self-actualized in that probably culturally determined form, whatever it is, form of self-expression. That becomes a huge burden, and frankly, a huge inequity. Because of course, in the flesh, in the physical world, society only has a handful of slots to give to people who get to win and fully express everything about themselves. Not everyone can fit in those few slots. And so the masses, probably the 90 to 95% of people that don't end up getting one of those spots in whatever it is, a relationship, career, whatever those slots are, those people just have to sit there and say, well, I never got to do that. I never got to express that part of myself. I never got to self-actualize in that way. And that becomes a huge burden where we go, well, because I didn't get to express that part of myself, I'm not meaningful. I don't matter. I don't fit. And all of us know that that's not true. Somehow we know that's not true. Somehow we know that I have worth. I fit. I matter, whether I got to express that thing or not. We know that's true about ourselves. But it doesn't map onto this huge burden that is laid onto people when we look at them and say, well, the way that you figure out that you're meaningful is that you reach this mountaintop high of physical expression. You know, it's so interesting, right? It's the difference between the things that the world tells us and biblical truth are just on a razor's edge, something that looks like truth. You just tip the other way, just the slightest iota, and you're on a totally different spiritual planet. Right? We live in a world that is basically telling people you need to be burning up all the time. You need to be like a torch that is just on fire all the time. The problem is that consumes your wick. It's just gone. It burns it up. I had this wild experience the other day. I can't even believe that this happened. It was so silly. This is not meant to be a weird self-promotional thing, but my birthday is in a week and a half. Don't. But that's, my family's in town. So my family's in town to help celebrate my birthday. And we did like an early birthday cake thing. I've never seen this happen before. We lit an indiscriminate number of candles. I'm just kidding. We lit 33 candles in a week and a half. 33 candles in a week and a half. And we lit them all. and one of them burned immediately. I mean, I've never seen a candle do this. Something was obviously defective, but we lit the candle, and the wax melted at a lightning pace, and it just ate up the wick, and it just, the wick just crumbled down. And they're like singing happy birthday to me, and this candle is a puddle of wax. Sometimes you light candles, and you're like, oh, there's a little wax. And like a third of this cake was candle wax, because it just ate this thing up. Needing to find myself as meaningful by expressing myself is like that candle. And you just have to be relighting it over and over and over again. And it burns you up and burns you up and burns you up. The fire of God sets you on fire, but doesn't consume you. That's the fire of God, right? Exodus 3, the burning bush. And the bush was on fire, but it was not burned up. Razor's edge. Birthday cake. These solutions that society gives us, they're helpful. They're performing a function for people. We should be gentle and generous and charitable, but also look at them clearly. They obviously do not answer the things that they're needing to answer. And if we were to get all the way down underneath it, they certainly don't have anything to say to the deep anxiety that we have about death and the meaninglessness that we have about death. The problem with these things and why they feel so dry when we engage with them over a period of time, isn't that like a bitter experience of our time? Like I got that thing that I wanted and I'm engaged with it, and now it's just like it's all wrung out. It's like a washcloth that's all wrung out. I have a friend who's in theater, and I love that she says that she's been on Broadway, and she's like, I wish every actor can be on Broadway so they would just know it's not that important. It's just the feeling of having it wrung out. It's good in the pursuit, but you get there and it's wrung out. Why is that? It's because we have an immaterial dimension alongside a physical dimension, and we feel wrung out and restless and unmeaningful when we try to make that immaterial part of ourselves correspond to physical things. It wasn't ever meant to correspond to physical things. It was meant to correspond to spiritual things. The soul corresponds to the spirit and then fills up the flesh with meaning. And when we go at it that way, we feel full and we feel filled up. We feel like we're burning, but we're not consumed. And when we get the order wrong, we're that nasty, burned up candle. Burn immediately. Jesus taught about this in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 to 20. Jesus says this. He told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, hear that language that we heard over and over again in Ecclesiastes, right here? Same language, same kind of guy. I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. Now, we read this parable, and of course, the immediate thing that sticks out is the abundance of materiality that this guy has. Right? And so we're looking at this, and certainly that's part of the parable. This guy's got so much stuff. You don't need that stuff, right? You can't take it with you. Don't worry about stuff. But notice he says, and I said to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. And God looks at that person and says, fool. What makes that person foolish? They think that their soul and the satisfaction of their soul corresponds to their material stuff. Now that I have all this physical stuff, soul, you will be settled and satisfied. God says this night your soul is required of you. And in the Greek, it's actually this third person plural verb. So it actually says this soul is required of you, like by these other things. But it doesn't say like what the other things are. But the idea is that there's something other than the material that the soul corresponds to. God says this person is foolish for thinking that the satisfaction of their soul, the requirements of their soul will be met in the pursuit of the physical. This is what's present in this passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, which is all about a person who's trying to work these things out. I don't know if you noticed it when I read the text. The text says I, me, or myself at least 34 times in the English, in the ESV. Right? I, my soul, my stuff. And he gets to the end of it all, and he says it's vanity. What does he say it's vanity? All was vanity and a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. There is the truth in this passage. The things of this person's soul, their spirit, their inner dimension, their new self, as Paul calls it, that part of us does not correspond to things that are under the sun. This person is right. There's nothing to be gained under the sun in pursuing those things. That doesn't mean that the things under the sun are meaningless. It just means that our immaterial dimension was made for the reality of God. Our soul is longing for the reality of God. Our soul's longing for spirit, for immaterial reality. The crisis of meaning in our time comes from the fact that at a personal level, but at a societal level, we attach the soul to physical things. We're attaching our spiritual dimension to physical answers. And it puts too much weight and burden on those physical things when our spirits and our souls are longing for something that corresponds to it. Once we find that thing, we come back to the physical and go, I'm able to freely engage with this now. This is just a good gift that my physical dimension can participate in. But our spiritual dimension needs spirit. It needs to look on itself and go, this finally is spirit of my spirit. We see that language in the Bible right around the physical dimension, flesh of flesh. Our spiritual dimension is looking for a soul that matches our soul, for a spirit that matches our spirit. It's looking for the reality of God. And into this, the societal crisis that we're in, I think the church can get this dimension wrong. The church can look at society, and I think it's because we're influenced by this whole worship the good thing that I was talking about. Everyone in our time wants to be moral. Everyone wants to be good. There's not just moralism in the church. There's moralism everywhere. It takes different forms, but everyone wants to be good. And in that place, the church can look at society and take on this judgmental religious thing where we go, oh my gosh, the crisis of our time is morality. People are doing all these immoral things. I really think that's wrong. Our age is excessively concerned with being moral. Our age loves the ethics of Jesus. Our age loves what Jesus has to say about neighbor love, about self-sacrifice. It's inconsistent in the way that it applies them, but so is the church sometimes. Come on. Our age wants to be moral. People do things that the church looks at and goes, that's immoral. We're not doing it to be immoral, to be bad. We want to be good in this time. People are just doing anything they can in this time to fit. It's a crisis of meaning. It's not a crisis of morals. People are doing absolutely anything that they can and anything that they have to do in order to say, I belong. I'm valuable. I'm meaningful. And the church looks at people and goes, you're bad. It totally misses it. And then it's this shrill tone that sort of shuts people down. Our age is lost par excellence. We're so lost that people know they're lost. People are saying, help me be found. Help me live a life that is meaningful. And the church should be a place that comes along and says, we're also looking for meaning in the world. We think we found something that gives us meaning, a meaning that doesn't go away. Let's talk about that. Let me offer that to you. Let's search and find that thing out together. The church is in this exact same place in terms of a crisis of meaning, right? All of the data that we have that sort of talks about currents in society and currents in the church, every time we look at any issue, I mean marital health, sexual health, volunteering, financial giving, there's some differences, but basically every single statistic that we have tells us that the same things are happening outside of the church as in the church. There's basically no difference. The same things that are happening in the culture are happening inside the church. Which, if we were to read that through the lens that I'm bringing out today, would lead us to say people in the church are struggling with meaning just as much as everybody else. And so people in the church are saying, I'm willing to do anything to feel like I fit. And so often all the church has to offer people is, well, be more good, do better, follow those rules more. When what the church actually needs to do is come in and proclaim the reality of the Spirit and say, what we need to do is in the name of Jesus, ask God to reveal to us the way in which our physical lives have a spiritual corresponding dimension. That would solve a crisis of meaning. Our marriages would be stronger if everyone who was married had a fire inside their marriage that reminded them that their marriage corresponds to a spiritual dimension of something that God is doing in the union of the spiritual and the physical. And our marriages are a sign of that. It's a spiritual reality that we participate in. That would keep marriages alive. That fire would actually be strong enough to give grace to your marriage to cover over all the things you get wrong. Because, right, we're in a time where it's like, well, if only people got all the rules right in their marriage better, if only we talked to each other better, and if only we're more emotionally healthy, all that stuff is great. We need all that stuff. But we still need something that's going to cover over a multitude of sins. You know what would cover over that? Being able to look at a relationship and go, this doesn't just have a physical dimension, it has a spiritual dimension. It's a sign of something spiritual, and it's on fire. That would be strong enough. All sorts of things in our lives, they're dying and decaying even in the church because we've allowed them to become spiritually dead. We've stopped going to God and saying, God, reveal to me the way in which this thing in my life corresponds to your spiritual reality. Show me what's happening here in the Spirit. That would keep these things alive. Every life, your life, my life, every single life, is either about to die or has just become alive. Every single life. We're either years, months, weeks away from being done in this physical realm, or our life is just waking up to a spiritual reality that one day is going to fill full our bodies, and we're just beginning the journey of that life. Every single life is like that. And when we attach to that part that our soul and our spirit is longing for, we begin to live now. Our lives stop becoming just about the slow decay and entropy and meaninglessness, but they begin to live. They begin to become filled full with spiritual life and reality. And you may be asking now, either in a sort of ultimate sense, or maybe you have some aspect of your life that you're holding up before the Lord and you're saying, I really care about this thing. I've really tried to be good at this thing and make this thing work, but it feels like I'm wringing something out. I can't get anything more out of it. It feels spiritually dead. How do I attach that thing to spiritual reality? How do I attach it to its home in the kingdom of heaven? The spiritual realm, when we talk about it, feels so far away. It feels so confusing. It feels like, what are you talking about, Adam? You're talking about all this spirit stuff. We can't see it. It's so challenging to think about. How do we know? Is there any way that we can know that we can find some fit in our lives with spiritual reality? Jesus' disciples are asking this question in John chapter 14, verses 5 to 6. Thomas says to him, to Jesus, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And maybe some of us are asking that even right now. We're saying, I agree that there's something in my life that feels wrung out and meaningless and dead. But I don't know how to get that into relationship with the Spirit. How do I get there? Like, how can I get somewhere if I don't know the way? How do I know where I'm going? Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus, he answers and doesn't answer the question here, right? He's like, he doesn't really tell them, how to get there and in terms of here are the steps of how to go the way that I'm going. He just says, I am. If you connect to me, somehow doing that brings you into this fit of the kingdom of the Father. You know, this is how Stanzi and I solved the last third of the puzzle. This is how we did it. We could not for the life of us, I'm sure someone who's better at puzzles would have been able to figure it out and look at the pieces and go, I see how this fits on the picture. We were not able to do that. We got things into very loose piles, and then we just looked for one piece at a time. And we stared at the unique shape of the piece that was missing, of the hole in the top third of the puzzle, and we just went through each piece and looked for a fit, not based on how the puzzle piece looked to us, but based on the fit of the physical piece itself. And sometimes life is like that. We simply are longing for meaning, and we know we will feel like we have meaning if we can see the big picture, but the big picture is obscured from us. We simply cannot see it. And in that place, you have to grab one piece and say, this fits right here. And that piece that connects us to spiritual reality, the key that unlocks the ability to bring our life into the kingdom of heaven, is Jesus. This is what Jesus says here. I can't tell you everything about how to get there and how you're going. You won't understand it. But if you come to me, you won't have the whole picture at the moment, but you will experience that fit. It will snap into place and you will go, that fits there. Sometimes we have to do that in our lives. We can't see the big picture. We've tried to put that puzzle together a million times and we've failed at it. And we just need to narrow down to one piece at a time and say, this fits. I'm just looking for this fit. Jesus is that fit in our lives. When our souls come to him in faith, we begin to see that things in our lives start to fit, even if it's just one piece at a time.